welcome to a special session here at Jackie's Academy with the amazing Dr. Connor. So
Hi.
here's the deal. Here's the deal, y'all. I'm gonna have her say hi. If you saw my show last season, you got to meet her, but I don't know if you watched it. So go ahead. Why don't you say hi to everybody? Introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Connor. I am an OBGYN. I am a mother of three. I am the founder and CEO of Diosara, which is an obstetrical emergency company. And we have been here on Substack, trying to spread the word about what's happening to women in the birthing world, and then also getting to collaborate with wonderful, brilliant, beautiful people like Jackie, and kind of venturing out into things that we initially didn't. We initially weren't really in our wheelhouse, and we've been able to, turn some of our research efforts and have found like really kind of shocking things. And so we're going to be talking about some of that today.
Yes, we are. And here's the deal. Research is so important because data doesn't lie. Patterns don't lie. So, all right, y'all. So if you're paying attention to my platform, my Substack, Instagram threads, you see that I am dropping every Tuesday and every Thursday a new case about a black murder. I'm saying murder within America. These cases are very detailed. A lot of them have trigger warnings on them. We're talking about, Renard Reynolds, Miller, Roy Bale, Juliana Neitz, TT Booley, and Otis Bird, just to name a few. And isn't that sick? Just to name a few. Um, and if you're reading my articles, you're noticing that I'm drawing patterns, right? And I'm drawing patterns because, especially with these individuals I named, they're all ruled suicides, right? The state has deemed them as suicides, right? So Dr. Connor is here with us today to break down, okay, how the suicide rulings that the state keeps handing us ain't fucking probable. Okay. So, Dr. Connor, why don't you speak about it?
Yeah, so, I've been watching your work for quite some time, and I watched the cases that you've been putting up, and then I started to also notice some patterns just on, looking on other people that I follow. I go on LinkedIn, and then I'm seeing a very similar pattern. And so I wanted to look deeper into it. What do we know? What do we not know? And so the Labor Rounds is kind of the research engine that we use in women's health. But we've been able to do research in all sorts of things. And we're sitting on like a pretty large repository of FBI data. And so that's the first thing that I went to is like, so what does our FBI data show us? And it was actually pretty shocking. I mean, there are things that like you know that the criminal justice system or whatever they call themselves. It's not fair for Black people, right? Like that's not a shocker to people. But when you start really looking at the data, just um, how pervasive it is. And how, sometimes people can make you feel like you're crazy.
Mhm.
Like if you're calling these things out or this conspiratorial. And then when you just look at the patterns, you just see something very different. And so I think I initially reached out to you probably maybe 2 months ago. And at that time, we kind of went back through the FBI databases and we found, and there's undoubtedly more cases, but we started off with a group of 31 people. And so we classified it. We took all 31, and in every case, the official ruling was a suicide, accident, or undetermined. And the families were persistent that something was wrong. Something didn't feel right. And so this is kind of the data set that we kind of started with. And so I think one thing to kind of step back is like, why is it so dangerous to rule these cases a suicide?
Mhm,
And so, saying something is a suicide has real consequences. And so we're going to talk about them one at a time. So the first is that once you deem something a suicide, the investigation ends.
mhm,
And that means the
mhm,
state takes all of its resources, all of its investigatory powers, all of its subpoena powers, all of the powers it has to really get down to the bottom of something is gone,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And so the manner of death is filled out on the death certificate. The detectives all stand down. The death leaves the counts, right? It leaves the
mhm,
data. I think which is really important. And so a suicide by definition cannot be a homicide. By
mhm,
definition cannot be a hate crime, right? And so it takes it completely off of those roles. And
mhm.
then the ruling holds, right? It is very, very hard to reverse these things. Once someone writes something down in an official ledger and stamps it, the amount of effort it takes to reverse it is almost infinite, right? Like, I mean, that's why
Mhm.
people are right now, like, sitting on death row. We know they're innocent. I mean, there are people right now on death row right this second. Everyone everyone involved in a case knows that they're innocent, and we and they're still sitting in jail. Like, literally, I mean,
There were brothers
lots of
executed.
people. Yeah,
There were
I mean,
brothers
lots of
executed
people.
recently that we knew were innocent, and they still
Lots of people.
executed them. It's like, what
Lots
the
of people,
ugh,
right? And you think
mm,
that that's impossible until you actually go and look, and you realize the law is a real quagmire. So if you don't get this stuff right up front, it makes decisions, right? Because things just kind of start, once you start a pattern, it just every like, things are just, like, self-perpetuating. And so that's, I think, the things that is the most appalling for a lot of these cases is they were determined before a determination could even reasonably be made, right? And so that has real consequences for the family, and that has consequences for obviously the deceased. But that has consequences for the community. And that's where the first injustice happens, right? Well, I guess not the first. The first injustice is the person so, is
mhm.
dead, right? And the family needs closure. But then there's like the second injustice where they don't even get the mechanisms of the state that we all kind of pay into I mean, this is what your tax dollars are for, y'all. Like this is why presumably we all contribute to this system, is so that when we need the system to come and help us do things that we cannot do ourselves, like it is very hard for family to run an investigation themselves. It's just operationally very, very hard. Yeah, you can hire a private detective. Yeah, you can hire an independent person to do an autopsy, but that's not the same state apparatus that exists, right? That is
And
a
can I add something to
oh
that
yeah, of
too?
course.
Just to go, stupid fly. Is when families, black families, they're typically forced to get these independent autopsies, but then those independent autopsies, they're deemed as, meh to the state and they can't be used.
Mhm,
So, and there, I mean, that's not cheap either.
mhm.
So even the quote unquote states or the quote unquote pathway for us to receive justice is tainted because they said, "Hey, it's there, but just kidding, you can't use it." Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's I mean, that's exactly right. So, to just look, a little bit more into the data. So there was a Lancet study that looked at deaths, because this is rampant. This is the other reason that I mean, we need police reform for a lot of reasons. Um, one of them being that the police aren't actually doing their job. They're doing a very,
You are
very
so
bad job.
sweet. You are so sweet. She's so sweet. I hope y'all know. Y'all usually see me like she's so sweet because I'll be saying this a little bit differently, but I like it. You go ahead, sister. You go ahead.
Uh, but I mean, if you just look at the number of like unsolved cases, I mean, it's going up pretty dramatically, y'all. Like it's even again, like even if you use their own metrics to judge them, by their own metrics, they are failing. So let's
Mm,
just kind of put that out there. But
mm,
there was a study in 2021, basically looking at how deaths are categorized. And so this is from the state's own ledger, right? And we know from national vital statistics that the state failed to report about 60% of the time that someone died by the state's own hand. Meaning, so if someone is killed by the state, that like doesn't enter the ledgers correctly. So that's a big problem, right? Like all these police deaths. So that already tells you that there is something really screwy about the data itself, right? That the state is keeping. And then when you go to the ambiguous deaths, that's when you start to see a pattern that I mean, that was really shocking to me. And so if you are Black and you die in some sort of ambiguous circumstances, you have a over two-fold increased chance to be recorded as a suicide just
Mm,
because you're Black.
mm,
So, so to say that a different way, if,
mm,
me, I get found in some random place dead. Um, I am more likely, about twice as likely to be categorized as a suicide than someone the same demographic, same set of circumstances that's white who gets found in that circumstance, right?
mm,
And so, that inequality in itself is, really damning. But then when you actually compare it to the likelihood of suicide, it becomes really appalling. So we have data on the likelihood of people committing suicide. Like that's just something the state records. We know if, and I have a graph here somewhere. But based on your population background, this is one of the things that the state gathers. And so, if you are American Indian, they have the highest suicide rates, about 23 per 100,000. The next highest one is white Americans. And then you have like Black and Asian Americans pretty low. They're at Black Americans around 9%, or no, sorry, 9 out of 100,000. And then Asian Americans around 6. And so, why that's important is we know statistically, if you are Black and dead, you're just less likely to have committed suicide. We just know that statistically. And so, the so what that should mean is if I find you dead in an ambiguous situation, I shouldn't be more likely to deem that a suicide. I should be less likely to deem that a suicide, because just out of probability, it's less likely. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm like making sense.
No,
What
you're
do you think?
making no, 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 like, you're making so much sense, and the parallel I want to draw right now is back to my cases, y'all. I said this. I am not a doctor. I do not have the data that is being brought to us, from Dr. Connor and her research. But I told you, right, the accessible data you can get for the suicide rates and how based off of this data, any Black person found in these situations needs to be investigated as a homicide. Something else went on. Okay. It's not automatically suicide. And again, when I'm writing these articles and I'm drawing these patterns, this is the data I'm using. This is what I'm not just talking out of my ass. This is the data. So when the police get to that crime scene, it should be what happened. It shouldn't be, oh, this Black person just killed himself. It should be what happened. It should start an investigation. Even if they don't want to fucking use the word homicide, fine, don't use it, but it should start an investigation. It shouldn't start their cover up, but that's what happens. You understand? All yours.
No, and I think it becomes even more concerning when you actually look, because we're talking about now all comers, right?
Mhm.
I didn't tell you age. I mean, I just took just only data we're looking at is race, right? And
Mhm.
so that's evaluating everyone, and we know who commits suicide. Unfortunately, we know the person who's most likely to commit suicide. They're older. They tend to be a white man, right? They're usually alone. So I mean, there are risk factors, right? That's what clinicians use in order to help like stratify people in terms of risk or not at risk. What they aren't are 18-year-olds in the prime of their life, Black men dating women, going out, having friends, having plans for the next day. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? Like that person just, when you just take all comers out of a population, that is not a person that commits suicide. It's just
Mhm.
not. Like we in medicine, we have to make those determinations, right? When you're
Mhm,
talking to a person and you're interviewing them, even if they're expressing suicide ideation, we don't just, people express that ideation all the time, right?
mm,
We have to then determine, like, well, how big is the risk? Actually, the risk. And when you start taking all these things into account, it really makes no sense. I mean, a lot of these men never had a history of depression ever.
mhm,
That's unlikely, right? People just don't one day go out and just commit suicide, right? These are, usually it's people who are struggling with mental health. They've been in and out of hospitalizations. They've tried multiple medications. They've had contact with the system multiple times for
mm,
depression. Like, this is the person that commits suicide, not these young men, right? And that's the thing that for me as like a clinician was the most alarming, is when you start looking at, yeah, like, this doesn't fit. This doesn't sound right. Is it possible? I guess anything is possible.
mhm,
But at the rate in which these cases are being called, and then the other thing is how quickly, right? Some of
mhm.
them, I think one of the cases, which one is it? I don't know. I have the name of, he was a young man that was found, let's see, the 21-year-old found hanging from a tree in, Scott County, Mississippi. What was his name? Jeez Louise, I have his name somewhere. I'm
We have so
apologies, I
many
forgot it.
Mississippi.
Um, but this case, really, stood out to me because it was just so, so I will bring up this young man's name because we need to, honor his name. But, his story is, this was in 2018, he's 21 years old. He was found hanging from, a low tree branch, hanging with a yellow nylon rope, in Mississippi, in the front yard of his white girlfriend's home.
Yes, okay, I know who you're talking about. I know who you're
I'm just
talking
like,
about.
"Huh,
Yes,
what?
and I know who you're
This
talking about,
this
but I'm gonna
sounds
have to look that.
very suspicious," right?
Yes,
And
yes,
so the Scott County
yes.
Sheriff's Office, and the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, and FBI all ruled it a suicide and reported no evidence of foul play, right? Um, they came and told the parents, the mother, the same night that of his death, the same night. It was a suicide, nothing else. Now, I just told you he's a 21-year-old man. He has a girlfriend, right? Like, all of those things are protective for suicide. Like, for all intents and purposes, he looks like he's a young man expecting to wake up the next day. I didn't tell you anything about him having multiple bouts of depression, him being in and out of psychiatric facilities, him, struggling with feelings of hopelessness, and like, that is the person who commits suicide. Not to mention that people typically don't commit suicide by hanging, right? Like, this is not
Well,
that common.
that's what I wanted to ask you. Did your research I'm still trying to find this brother's name because it's really sad. I have a notepad of just names, that's what I wanna ask you. Did your data reveal anything about hanging in public? Like, what are the how often does this happen, and how often do people who take their own lives do so in this manner with this visibility?
I don't know if we have those specific numbers. We did do some research on, hanging in general, and it's not that common of a pattern, number 1. Number 2, hanging leaves some very specific, evidentiary signs on a body that many of these cases don't have. I think probably later on, we're gonna be talking about hanging in particular. I wanna say I have some of that data, but it's a very odd, mechanism. And a lot of the data we don't have around how men like this commit suicide, because men of this age just typically aren't committing suicide, right? So there's
Oh,
just so many.
sorry, I have his name. I'm so sorry for interrupting you. It's
Yeah.
Willie Jones Jr.
Yes.
So, he was, found
Yeah,
hanging.
Willie. Mhm.
Yep,
Mhm.
in his white girlfriend's yard, neighbors reported arguing. The positioning didn't match the story, right? So that's what Dr. Connor's talking about. He could reach the side of the house. Like it didn't make sense. The lignature didn't match the scene. Nothing lined up, and then the sheriff just shut the case down on sight. And then when Willie's body reached that, I'm gonna not cuss out of respect for how pleasant Dr. Khan has been, but out of Dr. Stacy Turner's office, she uh she didn't challenge any of the inconsistencies. She didn't examine the evidence that contradicted the narrative. She just signed off on it.
I mean, that's malpractice in my opinion.
I mean, the fact that she still has her license, and y'all, there is a petition out there that has been started. I've talked about it before, based off of the cases that I've been sharing. Last time I looked, it was over 40,000 signatures. That's not enough. So it needs more. But there is a petition out there to revoke her license, and I'm also going to be providing tomorrow another avenue where we can submit complaints as well, because it's exactly what Dr. Connor said. Like, Dr. Stacey Turner has no right to be practicing medicine. Continue, sorry.
Yeah, so the other things that were fishy about his case is that that the branch there was a discrepancy in the height of the branch. Authorities had it at 6.5 to 7 feet. The independent investigators measured it at 7.5 to 9 feet. Willie was 5'8", right? And he also had a right shoulder injury that prevented him from lifting his arm above his head. And so the funeral home director himself, that prepared the body, documented a dislocated right shoulder,
Mm.
that he had scraped the back of his head, and that he had scratches on his face. This is again like just mechanically how would he hang himself, right? He would have. I mean, think about it. Just logistically think about it. He would have had to climb up to this tree, using a shoulder that we know is injured. He would have had to set the noose, and then he would have had to, like, I don't know, throw himself. I mean, it just mechanically, it just doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
And so, and this is the point. Listen, I'm not a police investigator. I'm not a
Neither am I.
criminologist. Like that. That's not my thing, right? But I'm a human with a brain, right?
It's
Um,
common
it's
sense.
it's just common sense. Like it just doesn't make any sense. And at the very least, it deserves investigation.
Yes.
It's enough inconsistencies that it means, like, you can't close the case. This is not a case that should be closed. This is a case that needs to be investigated, right? Not to mention, it's in front of his white girlfriend's house. He's a black man in Mississippi.
And that's it. And it goes back to the history again that's pulled into these cases that I continuously name. You have to look at the history of this country. Then you have to look at the history of Mississippi, where number one in lynching, where they wrote the blueprint for lynching, and not only lynching, but for cover-ups. I mean, this is what Mississippi does. You add that into the context that we're already discussing. And I mean, again, there is there is momentous amount of evidence to show that this warrants an investigation. And my ultimate goal, and with the help of incredible people, like Dr. Connor, is to not only get her medical license revoked, and that's Dr. Stacey Connor, but is to get all of the cases that she touched reopened and properly investigated so justice can be brought to these families. I don't give a shit how old these cases are. These brothers and these sisters deserve a voice. These families deserve justice. And the racialized violence in this country deserves to not only be named, but to be documented so that we have the data sets to show what is happening in this country.
Right, and so just to round up this case, so, there was this discrepancy you mentioned, 6 minutes between Willie entering the house and the 911 call, a neighbor who reported hearing a commotion outside with 3 male voices. All of this is very suspect, right? And so in April of 2021, the Hinds County Circuit Judge, Winston Kidd, entered a final judgment of more than 11.3 million against Harold O'Brien. This is the stepfather of Willie's girlfriend. And so O'Brien didn't appear to defend the case. And so it's already been, I don't want to say adjudicated, but we're not the first ones to bring up this inconsistencies, right? Like, people have recognized this doesn't make any sense. Have never been any criminal charges have been filed. In April of 2024, Dr. Michael Baden, a former chief medical examiner of New York City, he issued an independent report who concluded it's a homicide, not a suicide. But the certificate still says suicide, right? So who reconciles those two documents? The official ledger has something else. The thing that I think everyone should demand of our government, at the very least, white, black, Asian, whatever. Like, you deserve, if there is something that happens to you, you have a right to demand at least a fair investigation, right? And if that gets closed too soon, that will have detrimental impacts going forward, right? These things are not easily reversed. And that's like the danger. That should not be possible for them to be able to deem it a suicide within 24 hours without anyone else getting a say or getting a voice. That should not be possible.
And you know what I was just thinking? So a couple of things that I was thinking is, first of all, how buried the information is, because researching these cases too, again, I'm not, a professional over here. I do my research at my level. Uncovering some of this information is not easy.
No.
And so again, when you look his case up, suicide. I mean, you have to really dig to get to what you're saying. And to be honest, I didn't even see what you're saying. And so my gears started turning in that, again, this is all by design, right? This is all by design. But it really had my gears turning on how many of these do we not know about? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And how can we deep dive and find out how many of these were then deemed homicide, right? I know there was another case I wrote about where three pathologists looked at the case. I think it was Daniel Irvin, and said, no, this was a homicide. Like, how do we identify all these cases, create a general ledger, and then force a I don't know how to, petitions seem great, but how do we really force the reconciliation so that that death certificate is updated to reflect? Because that's important. And to just say, oh, it's not, it's over here that it's
Yeah.
homicide. Nah, that's not enough. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. No, no, no. I 100. So we started, let's see. I can share with people what we have started putting together.
Hmm.
And this is why, I think this is why collaborations like this are helpful. But this is the sort of thing that independent research can fund, right? Like, or independent research can do. And so these are the things I want, to encourage people, when you
Shit, I gotta
support
be doing it more. Like, why wasn't I freaking just like I gotta do it more because, again, excuse me for interrupting you, but it's like I got all the cases and I'm doing the patterns and I can get the basic data, but this deep dive that you're doing, I need to figure out how I can integrate it into the articles and into the cases that I'm throwing out. And obviously, we ain't gonna brainstorm here that now, but that's something that you're so right. And again, like, I'm not an expert in this area around, what you're talking about, to have you come in the level of validity, because again, that's when we're talking about this, we need as much validity as possible to be
yeah.
listened to. So I'm sorry for yeah.
No, no, but this is
For
no,
that.
you're exactly right. But this is why we're building the clinical partners network, right? Because we need the questions to ask, right? We need the target to point the research engine at, right? Because there's literally infinite number of things. I mean, again, like, we're sitting on, like, I think last time I looked at the database, maybe we have almost 200 federal registries, so federal data just sitting there. Obviously, like, we go through it, we mine it, and we try to discover, like, what's interesting. But we're small team, and so I need the questions to ask, right? Because the only reason I did this, it's not like the data, it's not like this data was better or worse than any other data. Is because I follow you, Jackie, and I I was just like, well, like, okay, she's saying this a lot. This is really everything I'm reading is, like, really suspect. Like, what is actually going on, right? And that
How
was
hard are
enough to
you?
exactly. Well, but that's why we need other people to contribute questions. We need other people to support. We need other people to contribute their own minds, their own work, because data this should not be exclusive, right? We want to give people an opportunity to have access to this data, right? This is all public. First of all, it's all public. You have the right to access it, but you they make it very hard to do. You have to like set up this. I mean, we have a whole infrastructure that is used to kind of pull it, to clean it, to categorize it in a way that you and I can, actually look at it. If I showed you the back end of this, it's not something that a human can just go and read.
Mhm,
And that kind of ambiguity is part of the power of the system, right?
mm,
Because like this, what we have done together could easily, we could have written like a $2 million grant, hired a team, 2, 3 years ago, we would have had to hire, this would have cost $2 million. Let me just say that. Like the amount of money that it would take to get to hire people to like do all of
mhm,
the work, it would have been a significant investment, right? And so that's why so many of these questions aren't getting asked, right?
mhm.
And so that's one of the things that we want to change. You should be able to have this data. The data is publicly available. This should be something that we all should be aware of, because that's how you hold power to account, right? Otherwise, all of this stuff kind of happens in the shadows, and we can't let this continue.
So lovely said, and I think, what I really want y'all to take away from this is that, you know, Dr. Connor said it was, "Your work inspired me to deep dive." Y'all have that same power. And part of my academy is to equip you with that power. So when I'm giving you these action items and I'm breaking down the patterns and I'm asking my questions, that's to inspire you. It's to show you the questions you need to be asking, to encourage you, what to think of, right? Okay, based off of this conversation, based off of this article, when the police got to that scene, what did they do next? How quickly did they shut it down? Like now you have those tools, right? And you have the suggestions of the general ledgers. You keep this, you log it, you document it, and you talk about it. And I promise you, no matter how big or how small your platform is, somebody's going to see it. And you might not even know about it. Someone will see it. And you can inspire that next breakthrough research, right? The next collaboration. So ask the questions is what I'm trying to say. Ask the questions, right? Think. That's what I'm literally training y'all to do.
Right, and I think the other, thing that I think is very powerful, that we haven't even scratched the surface on, is really community level data, right? Um, you People are probably sitting on massive amounts of data about their own community, and when you combine that with the federal data sets, now you have something, that is very unique, that nobody else is holding, right? Because the federal data, as we told you, it's very limited, right? I just told you that that report says if there's police violence involved, half of those deaths are misclassified. So right there, the error rate is enormous. But when you layer that on with community level data, so what do I mean very, very concretely? What's community level data? Like churches are sitting on a lot of this stuff, community centers, schools, just information about what's happening in your community. That is really, really powerful.
And what I'm gonna add to this is then you take all of this information, and if again you're watching me, you saw my show last Saturday where I literally spent half of my show telling you how to build community command centers in different segments within your community command centers to do exactly what Dr. Connor's saying. And now she's telling you where you need to go in your community to start gathering that data. Okay, you literally have the tools. Okay, this collaboration and in my articles, we're giving you the tools to do this. Okay, watch the show, and that ain't a plug. I ain't telling you watch my show. No, literally, I literally break it down for you. Okay, so let's go.
Right, and specifically around this, and in these cases, I don't know these people, but I'm sure there's someone in our collective networks who does, right? And that's what community level data is. And that on top of what we can collect publicly, well, that provides a very, very rich accounting. It would not be appropriate for me to go, confront, talk to the parents of these, because they're already dealing with like a huge tragedy. But for people who know them, maybe they want to tell their story. Maybe they want to account. Maybe they want to detail. I don't know, right? But this is the way that like community level data works. Is if you in our space with maternal mortality, if you know someone who has died in pregnancy, we need to tell those stories, right? We need to understand the circumstances. That is data. I know it doesn't sound like it, but those individual cases, that's how we will start to understand and see these patterns, particularly now where the government is starting to shut this stuff down. The accounting from real people is going to be priceless, right? And when it's you as one individual, it's a story. But when 1,000 individuals come together and put all those stories into a data set, well, that's that's a study. That's research. That's
Mhm,
what research is, right?
mhm,
1,000 of those stories coming together, and we have been so kind of, I think, in science we have our own bias that unless we collect the data, it's not valuable. But I think that's nonsense. I think that's again an elitist viewpoint.
mhm,
The, I think people actually would do a very good job of contributing and collecting to this body of knowledge, right? Which we all need to understand because it affects all of us. So the second case I have here, this was another young man. Um, his name was, I don't have the names on the slide. Let me look at the slides themselves. Let's see. Um, let's see. Lennon Lancey. That was this next young man. So he died August 29th in 2014. He was 17. He was found hanging from a swing set. And so his story is they found him hanging from the frame of a swing set in a mobile home community in North Carolina. His feet were 2 inches off the ground. The noose was made of belts that didn't belong to him.
mm,
He was wearing shoe sizes, a size and a half too small, and that weren't his own.
mm,
Wherein he had new Air Jordans he had bought days earlier that were found missing. He had laid out his football uniform before he left the house.
mm,
And so it was the night before an important, his first varsity game. And so when they found him dead, local and state authorities ruled it a suicide very quickly. And the pathologist that was retained by the family, paid for by the NAACP, noted that Lacey, he was 5'9", and that there was nothing at the swing set that he could have used to step up into a 6-foot noose. So
mm,
again, like the physical findings don't fit with the case. The police department, didn't follow correct protocol in sealing off the scene for more than 6 hours. Again, very similar story. He was dating a white woman.
mm,
She said that neighbors had warned her the relationship was, quote, not right. And then in December of 2014, so a couple months later, the FBI opened an investigation. And then in June of 2016, the Justice Department closed it, finding no evidence to suggest the death was a homicide and no basis for federal civil rights charges. But his mother has consistently said that her son was not lynched. This is a situation where the pieces are not fitting, right? The police have a duty to not just wave away these inconsistencies. Well, then explain it. Provide a a accounting of how this was supposed to work, right? Because
right.
we can't physically figure it out. So you please explain it.
And it reminds me of, um, Juliana Nitsa, a little 10-year-old girl or sorry, a little 16-year-old girl who was missing. She was missing for 10 days, and then she's found hanging, her feet touching the ground. Mind you, she just recently immigrated here, okay? So she went through all that displacement, was with her mom, missing for 10 days, and the police never answered or accounted for her whereabouts in those 10 days. Her cell phone was missing. They never told us if they found the cell phone, where the cell phone, did they look at the cell phone? Did they look at the history? Nothing. Now, mind you, when you call the detective assigned to the case, it says the case is closed. This was a suicide.
Yeah.
I mean, how? And like you just said, if you don't want us to question these cases, if you want us to be so confident in your ruling, then answer these questions. Be transparent. You know what I mean? The other thing they never answer is you talked about it briefly, but they never tell us if there's something at the crime scene that made it so these people could get into a tree to commit suicide. I mean, there was one brother who had a mask pulled over his head, over his face, and he had papers. Roy Bale, he had papers burnt at his feet. He had a mask over his face with papers burnt at his feet, and he was hanging. And he went back to Mississippi to fight for his land. Please, please please tell me how none of that warrants an investigation. How they said that black man committed. When did he light the fire underneath his feet? Was that before or after he somehow climbed the tree to then tie the noose to then hang himself? When did he put the hood on? Before, after? Was it before he lit the fire? I mean, this is the shit, y'all. Like this is it. Like
And
oh,
you ask yourself, like, why is this happening? It's because it, it it's so much easier.
look,
The racial terror in the South hasn't gone away. It's just been
no.
buried, right? It's just because we need to keep on this false narrative that we have moved to a different stage, like a post-racial stage, right? And this is quite inconvenient for that false narrative. If you know that young men are getting, hung um, uh, outside of of their white girlfriend's home, well, that's a very inconvenient story if you're at the same time trying to convince people that racism doesn't exist anymore, right? And so the state has every incentive to make these stories go away. And I don't know, like it makes sense to me, like
Makes sense to me.
that.
They don't want to name the state avoids any classification that would require racialized violence, that require them to name racialized violence. They do not want to name racialized violence because, like it does, it breaks the myth that you just said that racism is over, right? That racism is over. And also, the other thing that this is my lair is that this is happening. They're doing this, and we're seeing the uptick, and it's deliberate because it goes into the desensitization. They want to desensitize us. They want to desensitize the community. Oh, just another black person hanging from a tree. Oh, just an and that's what they're trying to do. And honestly, it's effective because these cases are not
Mhm.
talked about enough. I mean, even with everything that we provide you to say, "Hey, let's go." The rallies aren't loud enough.
Right,
How many of y'all stood up those community command centers? How many of y'all doing the work?
right, right. And that's part of the reason we wanted to like talk about this, is because this has an impact. This is not just quiet about, this is not just an individual family's tragedy. There is a tragedy, of course, like that family is suffering, right? When you know that your child, it did not commit suicide, because think about what you're saying to the family, right? You are making a statement about them, about their child, about the way that they raised them, about how much they knew about them. You're making a statement right there, right? And you should not do that without cause, right? That is a tremendous amount of suffering for a family. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is we also look at the flip side of the data, right? places where, the family thought that there was foul play, and then the state showed them that there wasn't. And you know what the family did? Time and time again, the family says when they see the evidence, they accept the finding. They ask for they thank the officials for their work, and then they ask for peace so they can mourn their loved ones. Right. So this is not a situation where people are out of vendetta to prove anything about the government. These are
Mm,
families who want peace, and they deserve peace. They are
mm,
suffering, right? They are hurting. And that is the thing that we see persistently time and time again. For these individual families, this is not a crusade for them. They're not trying to make some huge statement about racial justice. They want to understand what happened to their
mm.
child. And if you were a parent, I mean, if it was my child, I wouldn't accept that. I wouldn't accept it. I would not accept it. If it didn't make sense to me, I wouldn't accept it. I would demand and I would pay for it and I would fight to try to understand. All right. This is such a human need, right? That I hope everyone can empathize with, and the cruelty of it. The cruelty of looking at a mom, who is mourning the death of her child and saying like that child committed suicide and is just walking away. There's just such a lack of it's just so inhumane in my opinion.
I agree. And I just the whole time you're talking, all I could think of is Juliana needs his mother because nobody told her where her child was for 10 days.
I mean, that is so.
I mean, mm,
And it just reflects, like, the deeper rot in our society, right? Because a society that doesn't respond to this sort of cruelty is the society that we have right now, right? These are why these things matter, because you don't get here quietly. You get here
mm.
by ignoring suffering for decades, right? We have ignored people suffering time and time and time again, and then we come out the other side, and we're so surprised that there's so many white supremacists. Why are we so surprised? They've been lynching people out here. They've been hanging them from trees. We've been calling it suicide. I mean, we've been making every excuse left and right. If you say anything, you're radical. And then we're just like shocked. We're like shocked.
And that's the
We're
reason why if
shocked.
you all are wondering why my cases aren't all present day. It's for a reason. I am showing you how far back this goes. I'm showing you. I'm drawing the pattern. I'm showing you the past. I'm bringing it to the present. I'm doing it deliberately, okay? To show you exactly what Dr. Kana has been talking about. You understand? None of this is new. This has been happening. Y'all haven't been paying attention. And y'all accept the state's narrative too damn quickly. And y'all have to remember who the state is. You have to remember what the state is trying to protect. And we're talking about a state that was built and created by white supremacy. That's what they're trying to protect. That's their sole intention. They're not here to tell you the truth, especially not about Black bodies. So you have to ask the questions. You have to collect the data. You have to do the research, and then you have to push loudly every day.
Yes, I mean because a state that's capable of doing this to people is a state that is capable of an infinite amount of harm, and that's what you're starting to see, right? We're starting to see that the things that were hiding under the surface, they've always been there, right? They've been there, they've been collecting power, they've been organizing, and then
Mhm,
now people are so it just that's the thing that I find so it's almost offensive, right? That people are so shocked now, that there's so much racism. It's just like, I sometimes just wanna go on vacation. I'm just like, I just it's just so tiring. It's like, I wanna go back to bed. Like, how can I
I
can't
I
have this
feel
conversation again. Like, I cannot keep having the same conversation. What do you mean you're shocked? Like, there's nothing shocking about it. It's the most predictable thing. Where we are right
mhm,
now is completely predictable. That's what I need people to just really wrap their heads around. It is so predictable. It is the culmination of everything that we have allowed to fester for the last
mm,
several decades. Right?
mm,
We have been silencing this since the civil rights movement, right? We did a whole
mm,
bunch of work for so many generations, right? We did a
mm,
whole bunch of work, and then at some point we accepted that, like, okay, yeah, we did a good job. Let's pat ourselves on the back. People got very annoyed by talking about racism after Obama was elected. It was just like
mm,
annoying. It's like we're fine. We're post
mm,
racial. Like we have a black president. What more do you want?
mm.
And
Mm,
we let people in,
preach.
we let people think, make us think that become self-conscious, right? Become self-conscious of like calling this stuff out. And the result is, well, now we have a government who there's a fair amount of people who, I mean, I'm gonna go past that they're racist. I mean, a lot of them are 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 like sociopaths. Like there are people who, no, I'm serious. Like like
I
Steve
know, it's
Miller,
just
like he's a straight up sociopath. Like that's not normal, guys. Like
no,
this is like,
none of
now we're in the like, this is a mental health condition. Like the people, they want to just kill and murder people. They are
yes.
torturing people right now in internment camps. I just want people to take a step back, right? A government that 2 decades ago was calling obvious foul play, of black men, teenagers hanging outside, of their girlfriends' houses, calling that suicide. Because who commits suicide that way? Who just, like, goes to their white girlfriend's house to, like, just go hanging themselves for like, that doesn't even make any sense. This is the same government that now has people in internment camps right this second. There's a pregnant woman right now begging begging to be sent back to her home country, and we have them trapped. We are
Mm,
torturing people right now. We have her 7-year-old daughter doesn't want to live anymore. Like
mm.
this is like serious. This is what we're doing right now. We are torturing people. And you ask how we got here? Well, we got here by ignoring all of this, by pretending it didn't exist, by closing our eyes,
By
right?
not
That's
listening to
by
Black
not listening.
women. I'm sorry, that's it. I mean, not listening to Black women. We've been shouting this isn't new. We Black women haven't just been out here talking about this since, the pedophile in office came in. You understand? No. We've been here telling you, screaming, we predicted this. We told you what the outcome was gonna be. And here we are. And we're still here. And we're fucking tired, but we're still here. And we're still trying to get you to open your eyes. Okay, this is America, and it's gonna continue like this until collective unity truly starts happening. And people find their humanity because again, white supremacy beat the humanity, the empathy out of white people. Y'all need to find it. And y'all need to find it quick. You understand? And y'all need to come together. We need a collective unity. I mean, because this shit's only going to get worse. And when you think, can it get worse? Yes, it can. And
Yeah.
it will.
Yeah, it can get much worse. I don't want people to think yeah, I understand it's bad, it can get much worse. Don't let your
So
failure of imagination, blind you to, the amount of damage, that I think these people might do. I never wanna say it's too late, right? We have seen people fight their way back, from great suffering, from great suppression. We have seen it time and time again. History is full of that. But history is also full of, lots and lots of evil. And so
mm,
I want to, caution people. This is the time to like buck up, right? Like this is the time to brace yourself. This is the time to look deep inside and pull whatever it is that you have inside of you to keep fighting. This is the time to pull that out. I know people are tired. I know people don't have money. I know all of these things. And I'm still saying you need to do it, right? Because the consequence of not doing it is that our children are going to be looking back and they're going to be looking back at us from a very different vantage point, where where fighting, doing what Jackie and I are doing now, might get you killed. Right. I mean, there are countries where we could end up in jail. We would end up in jail for having this conversation. And thank God we're not there yet. But give them another, 2 decades.
I
That's where
mean,
they want. That's what they want, right?
I mean, look, you could start seeing. We might not be arrested quite yet, but I mean, the suppression's already happened. Our voices are already being removed from platforms. You understand? Like, I mean, I can't even post even my cases now on Meta. You mentioned suicide. Now it's locked down to 18. It's like Juliana Nitsa was 16, and you said she committed suicide, but now I can't talk about suicide. Like, are you good? So they're doing it now. This is the thing. This is all ramping up. right? And all of these things that you feel a little that you're turning, a little like, "Oh, I'm just gonna ignore it," like the social media suppression, like all of these things, like you think of little things, they're gonna build up. They're going to build up. And not only will our voices be removed, we will be removed. And I don't I
But
mean,
I
I mean, I'll be out. I'll be out. I mean, I ain't gonna be removed anyway, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to understand that, like, this isn't a fucking like, oh, like, I'm gonna say this isn't a, oh, I'm gonna go throw on, my bull up suit and go rent a bouncy house and have a moment. This no, this you already didn't work, but we'll leave that there. But again, this isn't the moment for that. And don't ask how, don't ask any of that because all you need to do is when you hang up from this live is go to my Substack. I've literally dropped article after article after article after article telling you what to do. Okay. We are almost at an hour and I don't care, but I want to respect your time. So I didn't know if there's any other big points that you wanted to talk through today before we do our closing. Your call. You have all the time in the
Yeah.
world.
So I wanted to talk about like what would make a big difference. So so number one, uh there are standards that exist for how these cases should be accredited and how they should be reviewed. About 96% of the country's roughly 2,300 death investigation offices are not accredited to the profession's own standard. So we have
Mm.
people who are not meeting, the majority of these people are not meeting what we have determined is the standard for what you should, what level of education, what level of training you should have in order to be able to make these determinations,
So what
right?
are they doing about it? Do they address it, or is it just we know this, but there's no,
We know
we
this,
just
but they're just
they're just
alternatives. I mean, they're just not meeting standards, right? And so that's number one, right? We need to at least meet the standards that we have set about how an autopsy is done, how these things are documented. What happens when there's disagreement between the coroner and the police? Like there are all standards, professional
Do
standards for
you
all of this.
do you have these all documented where, like, people that are calling in, my lord, people who are on the live or, like, my community could have access so they can see?
Like what is like what the standard should be?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So, like,
yeah.
that way, if you can throw it out or even just give me a link to it, I can include that in all of my articles so people have a standard to look at. So when they're investigating the cases within their communities and their community command centers, they'll know what to look for.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, so I can send that out for sure. The second thing is the family should have the right to see and contest the file. And there should be a lockout time, right? There should be amount of time that you give the family, especially if there's any sort of ambiguity to the death determination, there should be a mandatory amount of time that you have to wait, right? You just have to wait before you can make a final ruling, right? And that gives the family the time to get an independent investigator to contest the file, to contest any findings. This quick rush to determination that doesn't serve anyone. That doesn't serve the state. Well, it might serve the state's interests. So let me take that back. But if the state wanted the true accounting, the true ledger, there's no benefit to rushing. Right. And we see it all the time. When the state doesn't want to make a determination, doesn't, right? It will keep things ambiguous for a very long time. So the fact that these things are getting closed very quickly, that's just a reflection of power asymmetry. Because I guarantee you, if this is a rich family with power, they're not going to close that case without without more investigation, right? Because there'll be consequences that are going to be borne by the state, but they know that they can do this to these families, and so they take advantage of that power asymmetry by doing things inappropriately. And then, like, kind of the last thing is, excuse me, guys. Oh, okay. In Florida, so in Florida, in particular, the autopsy report of a suicide rule death is confidential by statute. So that means it's exempt from public records, withheld even from the family, and absent from a court order, or sorry, without a court order. And so what that means is if you want something to be sealed, you document it as a suicide
Mm,
because that takes it off of out of the public purview. And that's another form of harm, right? Something that was intended to protect families and protect individuals has been kind of
mm,
contorted,
manipulated.
manipulated to actually cause harm, right? To not be available for the public to actually be able to contest it, and for the family to be able to contest it, and and that's a real harm. And those are things that very quickly could provide. The state could do this immediately, right? The state can change these policies immediately. We're not asking for things that are going to take an enormous amount of money or things that are going to take huge policy changes or, Congress or, the state government. We're not asking for any of that stuff.
And and you know what? And I think that's the other thing that we need to point out is that, this is where the hurdles lie, but this is stuff that there's no hurdles. And again, just to equip people to understand this is what the state should be able to do like this. This might take them a little bit longer because of these other variables. But and I think, this is a lot to build and I'm willing to, you're willing to, but I think that this is so crucial that, you know what, I'm gonna actually build a segment out on my website to really house all of this information too, and the patterns and whatnot. And again, it would be yeah. So I like this a lot. We are at an hour. So what I wanted to say is like this conversation was so necessary and so needed, and I think necessary and needed is the same thing. So yeah. But I hope that it made y'all think, right? Like this we're not up here speaking as as angry with all the racism that has happened to us. We're not talking based off of our feelings, right? We're bringing you data and patterns, right? And the questions we're asking make sense, right? We're asking to hold these states and these institutions to the standards that they set for themselves, right? That they're not even meeting, right? Like this is what we're talking about. And this is the work. And we've empowered you with all of the knowledge, everything y'all need. And guess what? We're not done because we're coming back to you on August 27th for part two of this session. And even after that, me and Dr. Connor will always continue
Yes.
this
Yes.
collaboration. So you will see a lot more of us.
Yes, absolutely. Can I just share the screen just 2 seconds,
Share
just so
whatever
people?
you'd like, my
All
friend.
right, let's see if I got it. Okay, show your on. Got it. Let's see. Was it the right? Just continue 1 second. Okay, here you go. All right. Okay, so this is kind of what we've started to put together. And what we need is, again, we need people to, if this is interesting to you, if you want to see more of this, there are things that we didn't even have time to really talk about. Again, this just gives you a little bit about the people that we're focusing on, the data sources, the databases that we pulled on from, the number of states. So what I want to tell people is, first of all, if you've ever seen an error in what we're doing, please tell me. We're not here to like spread misinformation. We want the right information out there. But again, we're human. I can make a mistake, and if you find that I made a mistake, please, correct it. The other thing is we're pulling from several different data sources and we're trying to pull it together. And then we didn't even talk about, how the other populations that are really hurting and suffering here. And so, if you look at the data around trans women, it is just a whole. There's a lot of suffering there. We have to build out this data set a bit more, but we're starting to kind of grow it. And then this is looking at just like the hate crimes that are going up, right? We know that hate crimes are going up. I just want people to have the data, and so the number of anti-Black hate crimes is increasing. And then we're looking at hate crimes just in general across every group that's being targeted. And so you see anti-black, it leads the charge, followed by anti-Jewish hate crimes, gay, white, trans, etc. And then, this I think is probably one of the one of the most kind of damning things, by the government's own record. So the FBI records fewer than 11,000 of these cases. So let me see if I get this right. Yeah. So what we estimate is that there are about 200,000 to 300,000 hate crimes every year. The government records under 5% of them.
Mm.
That to me is we have to hold these people to account, right? Because by their own metrics, they are not doing the job that they say that it is so important. The reason that we fund the police, the fund the military, the fund all of these, these parts of the government at these rates is because presumably they're there to protect us in some measurable way. But how can you protect us if the basic functions of your job you are not doing? And that those are the things that I think anyone running for office, anyone who is this pro police agenda, anyone, I want you to ask them. Well, Wow. Yeah, sure. We will continue to fund the police, but I want the police to investigate hate crimes. Can you explain to me why less than 5% of these are being investigated? Tell me
Mm.
why are you missing a massive amount? And you know this, right? This is not new data. I think that study was published a couple years ago, right? They know that they're missing this and they're continuing they're continuing to not do their job essentially. If you look at the data around uh, rape and rape investigations, a very similar story. So much sexual assault is just not investigated. It's just a crime that they decided is not relevant. And those are the questions that I have for when people are talking about defund the police, not funding the police, blah, 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 blah. I don't care about any of that. What I want to know is why the police are not investigating crime. That is a question that I would like answered. And that's a question we need to put in front of them. Don't let them get it twisted. Don't let them confuse you about, political talking points. So
Mm.
this is the other thing that I wanted to mention about hanging. Hanging is not a black pattern. That's the other thing. When black people commit suicide, they don't do it by hanging, right? And so I think that's just a thing to just let's just put that out there. Even though Black Americans have a lower suicide rate, they commit suicide by different methods. And so this again is pointing away from the narrative that these young men, killed themselves. They didn't. Anyways, there's a lot of stuff on here. Please, take a look. We have all our sources. I explained to you how it was built. We are creating the Clinical Partners Network. We want people if you want to be a part of this research, if you want to have your questions answered, we want people to join us, right? So that is what the Clinical Partners Network is about.
Awesome. So here's the deal. I have to retract everything I said a moment ago. So you just got a trusted data source. So right now we know that everything that's being presented to us in this country is compromised, right? Um, this woman sitting right here, she ain't compromised. So we're getting a trusted data source. Use it. So what I'm going to be doing is in all of my cases that I share in a call out section, I'm going to link to the page that Dr. Kana just shared. And that's what you're going to use. That is I'm not religious, but that's your Bible, okay? When you're at your community command centers, that's the data you use to compile the list that you're going to bring to the next, town hall to address, the police and ask the questions, right? Um, that's what we're going to do. You're going to basically you have two powerhouses here that are going to equip you to ask the questions, to make the moves in a minute to which they can't gaslight you. So and then on my website, what I'm going to do is I do not need to reinvent the wheel, especially when it's done by such genius. So I'm going to take this link and under my everything black, I have black resources. I'm going to link it and I'm going to name it so we know exactly what it is. It will link it so that way anyone on the website can also go right there and link directly to Dr. Connor's work because it's amazing and there's going to be more to come of it. And Jackie's Academy is going to be elbow deep. So more to come. Look for more collaborations from us. And if you enjoyed tonight, don't worry, it will be posted. I will send out a beautiful article to complement this. I'll also be sharing clips on YouTube. And we will be back on August 27th with part two of this fantastic
Yeah.
discussion. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, and a
I
few
just,
people.
this is going to be mad corny, but every time I'm done talking to you, I want to give you a hug because,
Oh,
and I'm not saying this corny, I want to give you a hug because you give me the hope in humanity,
oh, so you're gonna
uh,
make me cry.
and not only that though, like, I might cry, like, I'm not crazy, like,
No, you're not crazy.
and the work I'm doing, I ain't gonna cry, is it matters, and,
It
like,
matters.
you're one of the people I collaborate with that makes me feel that, so, like, thank
It
you for
matters. It
that.
matters. And thank you for giving me the stage and the opportunity to do this. Again, you were the inspiration for this. I was looking at your things and I was like, man, she's coming up with a lot of what is going on. What is going on? Because it didn't make sense. And so I'm glad I took the opportunity to look. And a few people here are mentioning, yeah, if you know people who do this work, like the Jill Colin Jefferson's organization. I would love to work with them. I'm not collaborating with them. We actually use them as one of our data source because they make their data publicly available. But yeah, that would be great. If you people know them, please send them our way. We would love to collaborate with them because the more organizations that can put their brains together, and start collecting this information, it only gets more powerful, right?
Can
Um,
you drop before we close, I'm sorry, can you drop the link to the website again? It looks like there's a
yeah,
couple of people that were asking for that link one more time.
yeah, I'll drop it. Give me one.
And thanks y'all for sticking with us for so long. This is fun
Uh,
though.
I might have closed it. Let's see.
No
I
worries. What you can do, know what here what we're gonna do. You can send it to me after and I'll embed it right
Okay.
in the article because I'm gonna write an article. I'll embed it right in the article so you'll all be able to
Okay,
you'll have
perfect. Yeah. And it's in the little dashboard I sent you. So you have the link. It's the top link in the dashboard that I sent you in our chat. So you have that link so you can send it out to people. And then we'll send it out as well. But thank you everyone. I hope everyone has a great day. Keep fighting, keep your eyes open. We will get through this. The road might be a little bumpy, but it does give me, it helps us keep going, right? To know that it matters. It's very hard in this day and age to like get anyone's attention. So thank you for your attention. That's the most valuable commodity that you have, right? It's built billion-dollar companies. It's made people the richest men in the world. So your attention matters, right? Where you put your attention, where you put your efforts, where you put that, it has real value. So thank you.
All right. Thank you all. We'll see you again on August 27th and today's live will be available tomorrow. All right, bye.
Bye,
Bye
everyone.
y'all. Thanks again, Dr. Connor.
Bye.